Liz DeAngelis started in mobile app marketing, helped lead the Ad Council's COVID vaccine campaign when screwing up meant people died and not just dashboards turned red, drove growth at Monk's mid-market team, and now sits at Brainlabs asking the question that makes every trading desk uncomfortable. What if the machines did exactly what we told them to, and the problem was us the whole time? This is the ADOTAT Show, where we don't confuse motion with progress, dashboards with truth, or buzzwords with brains.
I'm Pesach Lattin. This is the ADOTAT Show, where we don't confuse motion with progress, dashboards with truth, or buzzwords with brains. Today's guest is Liz DeAngelis. She started mobile app marketing, helped lead the Ad Council's COVID-19 vaccine campaign when consequences were real, not theoretical, and later helped drive growth at Monk's mid-market team. She now sits at Brainlabs thinking about the question most of this industry avoids because it's uncomfortable. First of all, how are you really, and not a conference hall fine?
I am pretty good. It's already kicking off.
So now that we've established you have a pulse, let's talk about the thing everyone pretends is under control.
Yeah. Personally and professionally, the year is really rolling down the hill, I'll say, but it'll be good.
So we built something powerful.
Yeah, I stepped into a role, into a team that did... I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
So we built something powerful, automated, and scalable, and then somehow managed to bury under bad incentives, lazy thinking, and superstition dressed up at math. From where you sit, what actually went wrong, and what's just ugly but still doing its job?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, programmatic is just capitalism at its worst. We set machines and told them to do a certain thing, and they did that. However, the means for getting there and whether it's actually driving impact has yet to be determined, or at least I think you have to be really cognizant of what it is that you're doing to making sure that how you're investing your clients' money is actually helping them grow their business. I think there are a lot of people out there trying to, kind of programmatic truthers, if you will, that maybe take it to an extreme. But I think overall, people are starting to pay a lot more attention and trying to avoid things like fraud and, wasting a bunch of clients' money and paying a lot of these middlemen and really trying to clean up when at the end of the day, we're just placing ads on the internet.
So you mentioned that we created the swamp. Who exactly is we? Is it buyers, vendors, agencies, or someone else hiding behind the market?
It's everyone in my eyes. I think, I kind of lived through the growth of programmatic. And so when I first started, there was two people. There were the buyers and the publishers. And then, obviously this was a huge market. There's a lot of money to be made. And so anytime that's the case, people are going to find a way to weasel themselves in. I think networks obviously cleared a space for programmatic to kind of thrive, but there were no guardrails. When I started in programmatic, you started and stopped at the DSP. There was I couldn't have named an SSP. I didn't know how programmatic was actually being bought. And I think anytime that you're not sure what's happening in the middle, it's just kind of a breeding ground for people to be able to come in and exploit it. I don't know that they're all doing it with ill intent, but at the end of the day, that's really what's happening is everyone's trying to get a piece of the pie. So
can you give me a real moment where you...
If last touch attribution worked, your waiter would get full credit for the meal. We make sure the chef gets credit too. Incremental.
Looked at a media plan and thought, this technically works, but morally and strategically, it feels really, really wrong.
Yeah, I launched a B2C arm for a very large investment firm several years ago. And it was one of those moments where I looked at who we were targeting. We wanted people that had really high credit scores, but who also were kind of buried under credit card debt. And that was my first real moment of, we were renting America's money back at them. This was not long after 2008. And this client had bought all of this first party data of who all these people were. And we specifically were going after them. And they saw themselves as offering a solution to a problem. And I saw it as kind of predatory. But at the same time, because they had all these addresses, we were able to do addressable TV, and it performed incredibly well. And so that was kind of my first time balancing, and this was before I took my agency hiatus to the Ad Council of, okay, just because I can do something well, I need to actually feel confident in what it is that I'm doing.
So multiple choice question here. What's misconception about programmatic you think causes the most long-term damage? A, automation equals optimization, B, cheap equals efficient, C, attribution equals truth, or D, all of the above, and we keep funding it?
I mean, D, all of the above. B and C. B is probably my least favorite. I think B to me is absolutely the worst. I think B is partially how we get caught in this trap. But I think it is equally fueled by C. I think those two go hand in hand. This idea that cheap is better, and then we use our attribution and we use ROI to kind of validate that.
So if we totally built Reprogrammatic from scratch, which job titles do you think would disappear by Friday afternoon? HR does not like this question usually.
I think it's less about the job titles that would go away and how, because I am always a person of like, how can I save this job and convert it into something else? I think ideally it's more about having people who can help us understand where exactly everything is going. It's being able to invest in, no one really invests in people having the time to understand what it is that we can't see. And so maybe if we rebuilt it, there wouldn't be a need for that. But also maybe there would be people who are actually specialists in saying, okay, this is exactly what this path looks like. I think that's sort of coming to fruition with SPO. As much as I love our trafficking team, I would love to see really intense trafficking needs go away. I think if we were confident in the programs and the systems that we built, then we wouldn't feel the need to have all these third-party verification partners. And so that's probably where I would skim off the top.
You've also
Eric Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, isn't just the guy you call when your phone rings too much. He's the guy you must call. Need to navigate the legal minefield of robocalls, texts, and telemarketing nightmares? Troutman doesn't just give you advice. He hands you a roadmap, a compass, and a do not press this button sign. Practical? Yes. Actionable? Absolutely. And if you're not calling him first, let's be honest, you're probably making a mistake.
also said that one of the biggest lies in marketing is just because you can track it means it should matter. And that's a dangerous sentence. Can you unpack this for us?
Yeah, I mean, I look at so many clients who I've worked with who come from, who have been around for decades. And so they have seen the changes. If it's not the people themselves, it's at least, their predecessors, where we used to put media, we used to invest in advertising in the market, and you couldn't tell tomorrow what was happening. But they kept investing because they saw their businesses grow. So there was a fundamental belief that what they were doing was working. And then digital came about, and all of a sudden we could track everything. And so we started holding media accountable to things that it shouldn't have been held accountable for just because we could track it. I think clicks outside of search ads, and even kind of on search ads maybe, are probably the worst addition to media tracking that we have. And I think for a long time, there's still clients who really only want to look at click-through rate, and it blows my mind that we actually think that that's doing something for their brand, or that is an indicator of success.
At what point does attribution stop becoming useful and just becomes theater?
I kind of think all of attribution is theater. This idea that we can say confidently, this worked, this didn't, this drove this sale, this did this, and not account for every single other touch point that these people have, whether it was talking to a friend or, hearing about it through some sort of organic method. I think we as an industry would do a lot better if we stopped taking ourselves so seriously and actually stepped back and thought about, we just need to be putting the right mix into market and the right messaging, and try and get people to remember this idea that we can come up with the perfect sequence of ads and touch points, and that we can personalize that to every single person, is just theater. It's a great story and it's a fun story to tell, but it's not realistic.
Can you tell me about a campaign where attribution said it was a huge win, but reality said not even close?
Yeah, I think of most
revenue has a way of interrupting narratives.
Absolutely. I think of every retargeting campaign that I've ever run, and the amount of clients who look at that and say, well, that's what's working. That's where I need to put all of my money into. And having to actually take a step back and say, well, you're actually just looking at one single solitary metric. You're discounting all of these other touch points. That's where it's such a love-hate relationship that I have. Obviously, we know that it works because people keep doing it, but to what extent? And I think any lower funnel, whether it's search or retargeting, is always the first one to be overinvested for exactly that reason.
So I've noticed a lot of KPIs feel like emotional support KPIs in our industry. Which metric do you think people would cling to that people cling to because letting go of it would expose how fragile their strategy is.
A video completion rate, for one, I think
Yeah, I don't get that.
it makes no sense. Half the time, you have no option.
Because the videos that run in doctor offices complete all the time. When I'm sitting there watching Tubi in my doctor's office, that's the first thing I think about is every single video. If there's nobody in that office, it's still completing.
Yes, I think there are so many vanity metrics that we refer to as vanity metrics, and they just make people feel comfortable. They make it feel like their creative investment was worth it. They made it feel like what they're doing, like that people care. And at the end of the day, I think we just don't put ourselves into our own shoes enough to think about we are bombarded with thousands of ads every day, and maybe you remember 2. And just because a video completed does not mean that it's good or bad or going to drive a sale.
So one of the biggest newses of the last 2 weeks was that Pinterest bought CTV Scientific, and you wanted to talk briefly about this. For years, intent lived in search boxes and shopping carts. Now it's being wired directly into CTV buying. Why does this actually matter, and why are some marketers still acting like this is a side experiment instead of a structural shift?
I think it's so exciting because despite all of the acquisitions that happen for these, multi-million, billion conglomerate companies buying each other, there's not a lot of change that actually comes to CTV or TV in general. I mean, we act like there is. We act like CTV is this emerging channel, but it's just people watching TV as they always have. It's just streamed over the internet. So I think this is exciting because it feels like when, Amazon DSP rolled out Prime Video and being able to take really valuable first-party data and target it in a really premium environment. I think of this as kind of akin to that. It's new, it's exciting. Usually you have to make this choice of, am I going to go to Disney and Hulu and buy this really premium quality? Or am I going to, go to this one data provider and really hope, go to LinkedIn, knowing that they can target my B2B audience, but not having a lot of control over where it's actually running. So I think this brings an interesting element to it. I don't love the term performance CTV. I hope that they don't lean too heavily into that.
What does that actually mean? Does it real accountability or upgraded storytelling? Like, what does performance
CTV weird idea
actually mean?
For some reason, the way that they place ads makes someone take an action. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what performance is. You want someone to take an action. And it's crazy to me that they have branded this concept that they're somehow in control and their ads will do more than a standard CTV placement, when I think most of the time it's coming down to efficiency and blasting as many impressions as they can and not actually driving that incremental impact. So I hope they don't get stuck in that trap.
So why does TV still get treated as awareness only, though?
I think it's just a holdover for so long. Again, it kind of came down to what we could track and couldn't. We could track display better. We could track anything on the internet better. And so we held it to these crazy standards of like, okay, well, if I can track you, then you should be able to make someone take an action in the next 24 hours. Versus TV, we didn't know if it was having an impact for a while. We always gave it more of that leeway just because it's kind of like the nature of the beast. And so that's where I think display has been allowed to just kind of fold in on itself because we've just put so much pressure on it to do all of these things and just clutter the internet to where it's almost unusable now.
Right. So who do you think should be nervous about this acquisition? Legacy TV buyers, B, search teams who think they owned intent, C, programmatic teams still stuck in display thinking?
I actually think brands should be concerned who work with inflexible agencies. I have worked at many an inflexible agency where something new came to market. I remember meeting with Vistar 12 years ago, and it was so cool. It was the first of its kind, but we couldn't do anything with it because no one could decide if it lived with the digital team or the out-of-home team. And so we just didn't buy it. And so I think that's often what brands don't realize.
They protected the silos that much that they just
it keeps them from being able to test anything new because they can't figure out where it's going to live. Versus just like, who cares? It's new. We should be trying this. This is interesting. We should take advantage of it while it's new to market. I think that is ultimately the biggest issue. Google already kind of has ruined the intent search silos or the intent silos as it pertains to standard media buying with things like PMAX and demand gen and compiling all of these different ad types into one so that your standard agency can no longer say, oh, this falls under my search team or this falls under my programmatic team. I have a dream of reshaping our team so that they're actually buying based on, how and where the viewer is. Are they people specialize solely in streaming or searching and everything that entails that, rather than trying to just bucket them by the platforms that they manage?
So the ad industry often runs on polite fiction that this is a well-engineered cathedral and not a stack of index cards held together by revenue targets. You've used the phrase securing the house of cards, which implies realism, not fantasy. So let's be really honest here. What parts of this system are fragile, fixable, and what parts only survive because nobody wants to be the first they admit it's complete nonsense?
I think, to answer your second question first, the parts that are complete nonsense are the metrics that we hang our hats on and that we deliver to clients and that we, at the end of the day, say, did this work, did this not, rather than actually looking at their business impact. I think this whole industry, we love to hype ourselves up and think that we're doing so much. But you talk to any brand and the amount of revenue that's driven from their marketing spend is usually not the lion's share. We're not the ones out there saving the world and saving these businesses, and yet certainly act like we are.
So have you ever pulled a thread and it revealed way more risk than expected?
Yes. I think ultimately, I can remember a few years ago, we're trying to reconcile between what was spending in DV360 and what we were seeing through Campaign Manager 360. Or CM360. And we could not get the two to match up. And for as long as I can remember, we have allowed Google to be the arbiter of truth and say, this is exactly what is spending where. But when they can't even reconcile or align within their own platforms, and they don't have an answer as to why, it's hard to bring that back. And it's hard. The trust starts to erode over time. I think, again, this whole marketplace of third-party verification and everything that falls under that. On one hand, it's great because, it makes sense of why you should need a third party to track everything, have one source of truth. But also, how do you actually go in and validate that what they're saying is accurate? And that's where I think a lot of the struggle is.
Do you think Google exists if full transparency was required tomorrow?
I think they're too large to disappear overnight, but I think a lot of things would have to change. I don't think any of us are really willing to admit how little transparency we actually have. It's just really challenging to validate it. I think about identity solutions, and it's a great story. I think it makes sense. You can ask questions about the tech, but there's no way for you to actually go out and verify whether your ads reached an individual or a household.
So let's say you're like the empress of the entire authority of programmatic, and you can enforce one structural rule for buying. What is the rule, and who screams first?
Who does what first?
Screams first. Because screaming always means impact.
It's true. My role as Empress of Programmatic would be start at the end first. Think about where it is that you want to end up. And that is how you start your programmatic plan. I think all of media and planning and buying, you start at the end first. And the people who scream first are there's 200 different SSPs out there, if not more. I think they start to scream. I think these sites that just churn out content and unsure who even reaches them, findagrave.com, I think a lot of those sites start to scream. And ultimately, I think everyone would then be really pissed at me, because if we start buying only ads where actual humans are looking at the screen and it's not littered with 50 ads at a time, the price is going to go up.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm not going to be a very popular.
So you've helped drive growth inside an agency environment where speed is rewarded and reflection is optional. Scaling teams exposes everything: weak leadership, unclear values, and whether the culture was ever real. From your personal experience, what breaks first when growth outpaces maturity?
Process. Agencies love to avoid process. Is the people who keep it intact don't carry revenue. And I think a lot of people find it boring and unnecessary, and we should all just be able to, quote unquote, do our jobs. But at the end of the day, that is how sloppy work happens, mistakes happen. It's how you become really inefficient with your teams and your team's time. And that's ultimately how your margins start to shrink. And then after a few years, you're stuck trying to figure out where you went wrong without realizing it was kind of broken from the beginning.
So what separates leaders then who can scale teams from those that scale meetings well?
I think it's trust, and it's a desire to see the people that they manage grow and not being afraid that their growth will somehow inhibit your own. When in reality, if your team is doing well, you as a leader typically look pretty well, look pretty good.
Have you ever hired someone on paper that looked great, but in reality, it revealed like a deeper organizational flaw?
Yes. And oftentimes I look at the positions that agencies are put in when they might want to scale into a new, say they want to scale into retail media. Who's the first hire you make? Do you hire someone senior who can go out and sell and maybe knows how it all works, but they're super expensive and it's going to take a while until they can actually pay for themselves? Or do you go more junior, someone who can be hands on keyboard and jump into the weeds immediately, but is going to have trouble scaling that team on their own? I've seen that mistake happen over and over again. And I think it really comes down to, again, the organization and just kind of the economy that we live in, where the investment you make is expected to have an immediate return.
Is there any leadership tropes that you think should be retired immediately? For example, radical transparency, founder intuition, or hustle culture?
Definitely the last two. I pride myself on, I think that, sure, my job is leading a programmatic team, but I think the true joy I get out of my job is helping people maintain a good life balance with the job that they have and be able to find joy, but also feel confident in doing other things. So I hate that term hustle. There's nothing I love more than laying on the couch. I don't need to be hustling 24/7. And founder intuition is just bullshit.
So what do you think sustainable success looks like outside of LinkedIn?
Keeping a job.
My favorite part is I strand you on an island and you got to choose 5 people to go out with. Who are the 5 people and why did you choose them?
So I'm not just going to say this because I'm married to him, but I will say my husband. If there is ever a zombie apocalypse or I'm stranded on an island, he is very handy and very resourceful. It's a tough choice between Trey Parker and Matt Stone. I love South Park, and I think some levity is always important. I think they'll, bring some joy to the situation.
You like South Park this season?
I do. I like all of them for different reasons.
This season has been particularly interesting.
Yeah.
It says you're L&D nurse. I have no idea what that is.
My labor and delivery nurse. When I had a child, my labor and delivery nurse, that woman is unbelievable. Talk about calm under...
But you're not trying to give birth on the island.
No. She's not there to actually help me give labor, but she is a calming presence in a challenging time. I assume, not a bad idea to have a nurse on a stranded island. You never know what's going to happen.
And a lot of people pick Anthony Bourdain. I think that's interesting. Anthony Bourdain it seems to be quite common. I mean,
same.
And as I pointed out, it would be difficult nowadays, but...
It would, but there were no stipulations about it.
He's no longer around.
I didn't say what year this was. You're going to want to have someone who can get creative with the food that you find on this deserted island. So who better than the man himself?
Probably knows how to deep fry monkey brains.
Exactly. And then my best friend does.
So who becomes the de facto leader? And your best friend, yes, it's noted here.
Yeah.
Who is the leader? Because, democracy collapses fast.
True. Maybe me, which isn't a very confident answer for a leader.
What does this group say about what you value under pressure?
I think making sure that people don't lose hope. Being on a deserted island, I'm sure it gets, we all watched Castaway. It's easy to lose hope. But I think maintaining some positivity, just trying to enjoy what little you can about the situation that you're in.
What do you think becomes the most difficult when there's no audience or approval loop?
Probably Trey Parker or Matt Stone.
Right.
Sadly. I think they would really struggle with that. Although they would have us as a captive audience, so maybe Anthony.
And one person must be replaced with an industry peer. Who survives the swap and why?
Who would I get rid of? I'd probably have to get rid of my best friend. I love her, but I'm not totally sure.
And then who would you swap her with in the ad industry?
She brings. In the industry, I would bring in probably Tara Sadlak. She was my first boss. She's kick-ass.
Wait, what do you think actually matters?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that.
When everything is stripped away, what do you think matters?
From the island, personally or professionally?
In general.
In general. I think not being an asshole and being someone, in every element of life, whoever we interact with, don't make it terrible. Even if you're going through something, we've all got shit.
Everyone's always going through something, though.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm on social media, I notice like how everybody is going through something.
Everyone. And so on the one hand, it's like, yeah, if we all use that as a reason to be a dick, then we would be living in a world full of dicks, which sometimes we are. Whereas on the other hand, if you thought, wow, everyone is going
you live I've been to Boston before.
They're not all bad.
And if you say you're from New York, they really don't like you.
No, we've tried to limit that in the short time we've been here. Lean into the Pats culture.
So you said a home run interview is simply just not embarrassing yourself, which is refreshingly honest. But beyond that, who are you when the titles fall off and the work gets quiet?
I hope I am someone that people know that they can reach out to throughout any point in their career. I love getting to know the people that I work with on a much deeper level beyond just, how good are they at building a campaign in the trade desk. And I like continuing to be a resource and someone that they can come to throughout their lives, even if we don't work together anymore, which I pride myself in how close contact I stay with a lot of the people that I've worked with.
So you mentioned Tara Sedlak again is your Yoda, and she's currently at WPP, and she values rigor over noise and holds a genuine belief that the industry is fun despite flaws. And how did that help you show up to the industry?
So when I started my job working with Tara at M&C Saatchi, I didn't know what industry I was getting myself into. I had started off as a receptionist, and they had an open assistant media planner position that they offered to me, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what any of it was. I knew nothing. And so being able to learn from Tara, who exactly that, she came in, she commanded a room, she got shit done, but she also made it fun and made the working environment very personable and made it a really enjoyable place. And so I feel like that kind of set the tone for my career.
Was there a moment in your career where you realized you actually knew what you were doing?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think it was about 6 or 7 months into my job when I called my dad and I was like, I think I work in advertising. So obviously I did not pick it up too quick. And I think it was about 9 months in and I had a client reach out and my boss was gone and I answered the email. I answered their question and I felt really confident. And it had something to do with mobile app tracking when AdX was still a thing. And I was like, I get it. I can see in my mind how the SDK works and how it sends this back, and something just clicked.
So what are some opinions you soften publicly but hold firmly in private? Names are optional, but candor is not.
I think advertising has ruined a lot of the internet. I think we put a lot of faith and trust into some of these really large companies, thinking that they're doing the right thing and not holding them accountable for the impact that they're actually having.
So your superpower, I'm trying to read my notes here, is to be able to tell time?
I constantly am like, what time
I'm not sure I wrote this correctly, but that's literally what it says. It says that your superpower is getting to know what time it is.
Always knowing what time it is without having to look at a clock, which maybe just means I'm cramming.
Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. And why would you want chronological dominance?
I just am someone who, for whatever reason, I really thrive in maximizing the hours I have in a day down to the minute and without having to be like, okay, how much time do I have left on this thing before I can go? Or, if I can take a nap, being able to tell myself, wake up in 45 minutes and not having to set an alarm, triggered by alarms. Not having to set an alarm would be great.
How does your husband deal with that? Is this annoying to him, or he actually appreciates you're not one of those people that take a long time to get ready? Or you do, but you tell him exactly how long it is?
I don't take a long time to get ready. I think he takes longer to get ready. I think it frustrates him because I always have a timeline of this is the time we are going to leave by. And then I don't broadcast that time. And then I'll be like, we're late. And everyone's like, says who?
Well, I'm the same way. I drive everyone else. I know I have to leave at 8 o'clock or something. And then I'm just wandering around okay, I'm not upset, but I'm staring at everyone.
I think growing up, I was a horseback rider and it's all I wanted to do. And I would go sit in the car for hours waiting for someone to just take me. And I feel like I just always worked on this is the time we're leaving. This is when we're going. I'll be waiting in the car when you're ready.
Western or English?
I did both.
Oh, you did both?
Yeah. I started off doing English and then I switched to Western and now I ride English again.
Are you barrel riding?
I did do barrel racing.
I love
barrel racing at a goat tie.
Watching barrel.
It
I
is
love watching
so
that.
fun.
They have that in Vegas all the time. They have when I go to Vegas, they have it down at South, whatever the casino is called. And it's so much fun to watch. I have no idea what's going on half the time, but it's still fun to watch.
You just gallop as fast as you can and turn around barrels. It's great.
Sounds fun.
Sadly, there's very limited Western riding in Massachusetts.
3 years from now, what do you hope people say you fixed, not just shipped?
I hope I fixed how our agency, our clients, my team, how we talk and think and approach what we do. I think, again, it's very easy in this agency to find ways to always be like, well, we need more money. Look, this is working. Let's dump this in. And I like to take a more thoughtful approach. I feel like I'm constantly balancing this line of like, I don't have social media. I don't have Amazon Prime, but I understand the benefits of running ads on social. And I understand why Amazon is a great, place for advertisers to run if you sell on Amazon. And it's a difficult line for me to straddle. So as much as I can kind of enforce my own humanity into how we approach advertising and try to not make it terrible for everyone and the people on the other side, and hopefully in turn drive better success for my clients then.
So speaking of making it horrible for everyone, we force everyone to dance at the end of the show.
Thanks for watching the ADOTAT Show. If this episode made you uncomfortable, good. That means your attribution model probably deserves a second look. Big thanks to our sponsors Troutman Amin for keeping this industry legally honest, or at least legally adjacent, and Incremental for helping brands figure out what's actually working instead of what's just completing videos in empty doctors' offices. Stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday. We'll see you next time. This is the ADOTAT Show.